Here's the deal. It's dark. It's not a fair game. And it's that world that motivates Jesus to enter into it, suffer for it, to redeem the world out of it. If that wasn't the case, Jesus doesn't need to die. He just needs to teach. If bondage isn't real and the accusatory nature and power of demonic influence isn't a real thing, then the only narrative that you have to explain what Jesus is doing is that God is mad at humans and Jesus needs to make his angry God pacified. And that's not the story of the scriptures. So you've got in there multiple layers of the narrative that's playing out on the earth. And one of those layers is that Jesus is dying to set humans free in the here and the now.
Are we in each other's cameras?
When Terrell leans pretty forward, he is. Yeah, about right there.
I'm up in your business when I do that?
That's just...
I'm not too worried about it.
Yeah, right there is good.
Okay.
Oh. How's it going, Terrell?
Amos, I feel like it's going pretty good. All things considered. Yeah. What would I say about where we are right now? Lots of things are underway. We're now underway building my parents' house. So in the middle of construction on 3 houses on the same property. Something we've been working on for roughly 7 years. Not necessarily the construction, but a family place that has finding the property, doing the work that we needed to do to renovate the home we were living in so we could sell the home we were living in. So we've been kind of mobile for 7 years now. So yeah, we poured my dad's slab 2 weeks ago. So it's a big deal because we'll move into my place, then my cousins will hopefully be done shortly after. But it's a really exciting thing that we've been pushing for a long time, like a vision that we really wanted to see fulfilled while our kids were young, which is to be on a single property that has, all of the family members that we have that would want that, so it's like I have 3 aunts out there. Sorry, I have my mom and 2 aunts, and cousins, their kids, my in-laws. Theirs is not a permanent place. They have a place that they visit, and then like I said, my parents. So it's not a normal thing, but it's something that we really have been excited to do. So community, man. So yeah. So that side of things is underway and moving along. Church is fantastic. Definitely summer is the time where we throw everything against the wall and see what sticks and what doesn't stick and what needs to be changed. So tons and tons and tons of meetings to try to just consider where is God taking us next year, for the year, but then the life of Mosaic as a whole. We feel like we're in when I say a critical place, it feels like we're at a crossroads of I don't know. I don't know how to put it other than a crossroads of we becoming who we wanted to be when we started this thing. And so there's lots of stuff going on there as well.
Do you know where you're trying to get?
That's the thing that I think we're at the crossroads about. I think the idea of the crossroads is where have you come from? Because that affects you in a meaningful way. And then where exactly are we trying to go is the big question right now. Because I think who we are is shaped by where we've been, but where we are going is the thing that I am we've got the elders coming to preach all of July. I'll preach this week, and then the elders are up for the next few weeks, which I haven't been out of the pulpit like that in a long time. More than 1 week in over 2 years now. And so it's just time. I just need some time with the Lord to kind of understand this is your church, not my church, but what do you have for your church in this town? Because to say where are we going and why is the question that I really think we need to answer right now.
Who we got coming up on preaching?
All of the elders except for Malcolm. So we got this week is Garth, Sorry, no. I'm
Next
this week. Following week is Garth, then Paul, then Joe Musser.
Ooh,
Yeah.
that'll be good.
We don't get to hear from Joe Musser very often,
No.
so it's going to be nice. He used to, be a professor at SFA.
How does this overlap with the other churches in town? Like, is there a group of pastors that keep up and like,
Occasionally there have been. I think Mission Nac kind of brought the pastors together quite a bit on a regular basis 4 or 5 years ago. We still stay in touch a little bit, but a lot of those guys have moved on. There's new guys in. And so when that happens, it's like you got to rebuild it, and you have to rebuild it in a different way every time because there's not really a platform for like everybody getting together. So, right now it's when we do NAC nights of worship, there's some interaction there, and we've got a good rapport with each other, but nothing that's like strategic by any means.
Yeah.
Yeah.
well, there's always like such a bifurcation with churches and like almost a tribalism.
Mm-hmm. It goes there kind of naturally. Do you know what I
Yeah.
mean?
Well, I mean, it's obvious why, but like, should it be that way?
Oh, right. I mean, I think that's the deal is that denominationalism did that to the Protestant Reformation. It created all of these very variegations, based on experience and theology. And so now we're just kind of the children of that. I don't think that anybody wants it. I don't know that there's any. The reality is it takes so much time just to do your own church well. Like that it's like you can get locked in that place. Do you know what I mean? And until you've been really intentional about getting everything in place where your church doesn't require more than 40 to 50 hours a week, then it's like, how do you work together in any sort of meaningful way? Mission Nac's probably the most meaningful way we've done that, but it's definitely not like a week in, week out thing. And then the question of should it or should it not be, I don't know whether it should or shouldn't be.
Yeah.
I mean?
How big is too big for a church?
I have no idea. I talked to a friend about this a while ago. I think Jesus decides that, and I think he decides it based on location and what he's trying to accomplish. When we start to bring principles like that, we are literally. I think when we do stuff like that, Jesus is like, for real, like you get to decide who makes it too big or too small. Do you know what I mean? Like, I think he's got agendas that he's trying to see fulfilled. I think what you have to acknowledge is small churches, like let's just say a house church, has a benefit and a con, whereas a medium-sized church has a benefit and a con, or multiple. And then so for a large church, you know what I mean? I think you have to be aware of those and recognize that if once you hit certain sizes, you are necessarily making it more difficult to do particular things, right? Discipleship happens very easy in a smaller context. It's just a lot easier to have face-to-face, one-on-one, and to know where another person is at. And then if discipleship is a thing that church thinks about, they probably have a mechanism that they are using to create disciples, something that's transferable so that we all know what discipleship looks like. That's very easy when you've got 20 people, right? When you've got 200 people, not necessarily easy, because half of the people there, they don't come to church thinking that I go to church to be made into a disciple. I go to church because people in the South go to church. And since people in the South go to church, I'm going to find a church that I like. So if I go to church, like I'm good. You know what I mean? So you have to recognize that at some level, that's part of what you're working up against when you are. But when you have a church of 250 or 550 or 10,000, you have an enormous amount of resources that you can leverage towards knocking down things that need a lot of resources to be knocked down when it comes to the kingdom of God moving and the kingdom of God positively affecting dark or impoverished places. And so resources are a thing that God uses in his kingdom, and people that are gathered together, and you can organize them in a way that it doesn't harm people by being in a large church, can leverage a lot of resources. That's a good thing. So you just got to know, I think, there's pros and cons, and know what they are and decide what you value and who you want to be. And so I think that, we are a church that is, that I think if historically discipleship was our bread and butter for so long. and when we were on the move and we were meeting in like gyms and we didn't have a home base. It was like everybody was bought in and everybody was serving because it took so much time and energy to put church on. So it was a lot easier at that time, I think, you had in the culture, service and discipleship. We have a building now.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Invested in activities, and then people can just walk in off the street and like join in service and not really participate as much. Or like if you're going to a home church or a barn or something, like you're pretty participatory.
And we have so much, I think, in our culture, in our church culture, I think freedom and life in Jesus has become such like a meaningful part of my journey in the Lord that I can emphasize that to the degree that I don't emphasize are you confident and able to bring the life that you have into the life of another person? And do you know that you have an invitation, responsibility to do that? Same thing for service. You know what I mean? So I think that's been what's on my heart lately a bit. We've talked about it a little bit, but being intentional about who we're becoming, so that we don't become something that we don't want to be accidentally, and that we go where we want to go and we don't go anywhere accidentally.
When you say we, you mean the church?
The church, yeah.
Okay.
Not me and you.
Not us. Okay. We don't go anywhere accidentally. How did you put it on Sunday? I think you said something about you're not a member of like a building or a member of like this church or that church, you're a member of the church.
Yeah, I think the case I was making is right from Romans 12. He doesn't say it's not what you would call an exhortation in Romans 12. It's not, Paul's not saying you ought to become a member of a church. If you submit to Jesus, you ought to become a member of a church and then serve in that church. He's essentially saying you are a member of Christ's body so it's a statement of fact, not an exhortation to become that. It's just, that's what you are.
By virtue of being a Christian.
By virtue of your submission to Jesus, you became a member of his body. Therefore, if you are a non-participatory member of the body of Christ, it is harming you, and it's in effect leaving other people, let's say, I don't want to say harmed because I think that's too active. It's not quite harmed, but there are things that need to be done that are not being done in the body, and the body itself as a whole is harmed by that. And kind of the point that I made is,
well, if you're inactive, you wither.
Yeah. But if your liver isn't working, your body is hurt by that. Mm-hmm. Just like there are members of the body that aren't functioning as members of the body, even though they are members of the body. And so, the kind of the exhortation then from me to people that were in the pews is like, you whether you've ascribed to membership in a church or not, just recognize that you are a member of the body of Christ. So start to think about that intentionally, and which local body, which local group of human beings do you want to benefit with the gifts that you've been given? Because you've been given gifts. There's no way around that. They may not be the ones that you wanted. They may not be the ones that look super spiritual, but they are an enormous benefit. And so, yeah. There is church membership, but
it's an interesting way to put it too. Cause like, I know like growing up in being a kid of a pastor and everything, like there's certain gifts that are more, say, valued than others, speaking in tongues, prophecy, whatever you want to call it. And then like, I tend to be fairly reserved and very like laid back in those areas. Like I don't get big into worship. I don't like, honestly, I hate to say it, but like, if you ask me what part of church I would cut out, I would say the music. Cause I'm just not into it.
Amos, you've told me that before.
I'm just not into it. But like, I don't think there's anything wrong with it. I think it should be there. But it is one of those things where you can start feeling guilty that you're not invested in those things because those aren't your gifts. I don't know if I'm going down a
I mean, I think that's I mean, I think that's right at some level that you can check out you know what I mean. But the thing is that you do have a gift, and so use it. Which that's the thing that you're doing, right? Like
that's the point I'm getting at.
Yeah, exactly right. Yeah.
I think I can serve better when like keeping cameras going and keeping like getting the message online, archiving the sermons.
Yeah, there is a way that you're wired that you jumped in. Now, the thing that I would always push up against Amos on is, well, maybe if you clapped your hands and like moved your hips a little bit,
that's where like my mind goes is like, what am I doing wrong? Like, why am I not? Why is Garth over in the corner like hands up in the air, like in the moment, like having a spiritual experience, and I'm just kind of like arms folded in the corner.
And so this gets into the semantics of what the word worship means and how we use it in our culture and how it was used differently back then. Because what's difficult about Romans 12 is it doesn't matter which translation you look at. You know, when it says in Romans 12:1, present your body as a living sacrifice. In the ESV, it says as a living sacrifice, holy and acceptable to God, because this is your spiritual worship. Well, in the original language, it doesn't say spiritual worship. It says something more like logical service. So so every translation is trying to take that 2-word phrase and figure out exactly what do they mean by that, right? So then people use language, well, Amos, you should definitely sing at church because worship is for God and not for you. So it doesn't matter if you get anything out of it. And there is a grain of truth in that. But there's also a grain of truth in the reality that worship is not singing in the Romans 12:1 sense. Worship is, all the things that follow in Romans 12, down to verse 8, and then even follow in the rest of Romans. But it's a way of living your life. It's the giving over of yourself to the service of God's people. It's, the way that you interact with the government when there is a ruler in power who is, not just corrupt, but is killing Christians. And how do you honor or dishonor that person? So those things are your logical, and it's not service as go do something. It's your logical mechanism of devotion to the spiritual being that we call Yahweh. If all of Romans 1-11 is accurate and all of that stuff, those beautiful truths are accurate, then what does it look like for us to? And so I would say the answer has much less to do with singing, even though I do think there is a beautiful thing that God receives when we sing to him. And I think there's a beautiful thing that we get caught up into when we sing to him. So that's where I would be like, well, Amos, you should do it anyway, because it's beautiful, and you might explore the beauty of it, even though you have to get through the barriers that are in there naturally.
Yeah. I think there's a certain amount of self-awareness too that comes into play, where like, what will other people think of you?
For sure.
Which goes back to what you said on Sunday, where you said we don't often think highly of ourselves. We just think of ourselves too often.
Yeah. Yeah. Which is so funny, right? Like that, that text has just been profound for me for the last couple of weeks, because there's that phrase in Romans 12, I guess it's 2 or 3, don't think more highly of yourself than you ought to. And that phrase is just one word, hyperphreneo, in Greek, transliterated hyperphreneo. But keep in mind, that's where we get our word frenetic. So if you know what frenetic thinking is just like, I'm constantly cycling the same thought over and over and over again without control or intentionality. And then that thought is having an effect in me, right?
It's repetitive.
Yeah, it's just a repetitive, recycled, non-productive thought that I'm either not engaging with or I am engaging with, and it's driving me into a lot of times a place of anxiety or fear or agitation. But in Greek, phreneo just means it's an appropriate amount of thinking about self. Hyperphreneo or huperphreneo just means that it's that self-thinking on overdrive. So yeah, it definitely can mean like I view myself highly, but I think for a lot of people nowadays, we do that to each other. Like I will use what I'm good at to put you down a little bit in my own mind. Do you know what I mean? Like, because that's why he gets into gifts right after that, right? Because he's like, hey, you've been gifted a certain way because it's actually for people, not to promote yourself internally above them. It's there for them.
Well, it's there for service.
Yeah, it's there to just give yourself to them so that they can feel some aspect of the presence of God or the goodness of God through you. Yeah, so that word is a very interesting word. Very interesting concept that we don't have a word for in English, but that's what it is. It's that fixation on how is this present circumstance going to affect me and my future, and how is what's being asked of me going to affect me and affect my future.
Do you think that's highly prevalent in Western culture?
I think it's humans, right? I mean, you're talking about a non-Western culture that book was written in, and it's the first place that the author goes when he transitions.
I think I would argue that was the root of Western culture, but
individualism for sure. Has it taken root in a very, very special way in Western culture? For sure. Yeah. There's no doubt. Because I mean, we pride ourselves on individualism, and it's the ocean we swim in, whereas other cultures doesn't swim in that ocean. So yeah. I think it's a human thing, but then
It's accentuated with America, and
I would say that's the right. I would say it's accentuated, right, in America and the Western influenced parts of the world.
How do we get past that?
Oh gosh. I mean, I think the answer is in there.
It doesn't bring happiness. Like everyone, obviously, because it's anxiety, and everyone who's consumed with themselves, like you can't serve anyone else when you're consumed with yourself.
Right, right. Well, the thing is when you're consumed with yourself, you ought to just go and serve somebody else.
Exactly.
That's like the thing to do. Because that's why it's funny where he doesn't say, so start like getting your mind around and fixing your thinking. He doesn't. He just says, go do, like, if you have gifts, let's use them. And it's almost like the doing the doing helps unwind that. And I think this is the other, I don't know that we can, I don't think there's any more a problem with individualism than there is a problem with hyper fixation on communal cultures, right? Like there's as much, it's just like the small church, big church thing. There is an embedded con in hyper individualism, and there's an embedded con in no individualism at all, that you don't matter and you're part of a collective. And so you do everything for the sake of the collective. I don't know that that's a biblical model either. It's just that the Bible was written from a context that was communal, and it's written, and now we're reading it in a context which is individual.
Well,
so
but you were like communally in a time where you relied on your neighbor to survive.
You had to.
Like if you went outside your nation, you got killed.
Yeah. It was tough. Is you're a traveler, and
someone was saying the other day that Socrates, the reason that he he could have like left and gone out, or he could have drank the poison, the hemlock.
Right.
He chose the hemlock because leaving was death. It was excommunication. Well, they didn't know. They were saying that they'd actually kill you in another city if you didn't have your own city.
I don't know who said that, but I think that's wrong. Socrates was essentially saying, from my understanding of Plato's writings, Socrates in that instance, in the dialogue where Socrates drinks the hemlock and that whole thing, I think it has more to do with him saying, this city actually has been good to me, and me dying publicly for the faults of that city is actually a better statement to what's going on. It was more of like it wasn't a fear of dying somewhere else. I
don't think it was a fear, period. Like it was just
no, I think he viewed himself as like, I'm going down with the ship, like, because he's being killed because he's essentially corrupting the youth by teaching them philosophy instead of that Greek gods run everything. And he's trying to bring something meaningful into Greek culture with that thinking. And so that's his way of kind of going down with the ship. That's the wrong way to say it, but I don't have a better way to say it. But it is, him not leaving was another statement in and of itself. And I think from Plato's standpoint, to kind of idealize Socrates and say that, like,
sure.
Know.
But like from a survival standpoint, like excommunication is death without like modern technology. That's one thing that like everyone can be an individual and live in their apartment and get their Uber Eats delivered and never interact with the world. You couldn't do that unless you wanted to be a hermit on a hill.
That's
but
true.
then you still had to go out and work for your food.
Oh yeah. Technology has made it easier to isolate. 1,000,000%. Yeah. Oh yeah, for sure. Yeah.
Along with the individualism that comes with being American. But I don't think that's the principle there. I think like that was the idea behind like small community or small, the smaller the community, the more effect the laws have over you. Like the laws in Nacogdoches in a lot of ways should matter more than the laws of the nation because that's the community we live in.
Okay.
The political leaders here should matter somewhat more than the higher up the ladder you go.
And I think that was the idea originally. Do you know what I mean?
It was.
Right. I think that was the idea behind the American experiment, right?
Well, we call it the American experiment from our perspective, but I don't know. It's like everything else was monarchy and democracy and mob rule. And I don't know. What do you think, Ben? You're being awful silent over there.
You didn't tell me what translation this is, though, Ben.
So this is the y'all translation.
I was going to say the plural. It reads almost like mine does, except for it has the plural you as y'all. So this is like the Texas English Standard Version.
Yeah, I like jumping back and forth between the ESV and the y'all version. Essentially, the y'all
it's really called the y'all version.
Yeah,
This could I have been frustrated that we don't have a way to convey the plural you in the Bible.
This might.
I just wish they would have given a better title because it's like a legitimate thing.
You all.
Yeah, it translates the original Hebrew and Greek text using y'all when referring to a group.
What's wrong with ye?
Ye.
We're not getting into it, Amos.
I like ye.
I know because you were raised on ye.
Yeah.
None of us are raised on ye.
That doesn't mean you can't adapt.
Yeah, but it's like having me read a German Bible.
I think it's a little different than a
You
German
know,
Bible.
It's but not much.
Like you can understand all the words that are there. It's just how they're kind of put together might be slightly archaic from modern standards.
Way archaic.
It's only 400 years ago. It's still modern English.
That is very
That's modern English back there.
That is a different language.
Middle English. Modern middle. It's not Old English.
It's not Old English because
No.
we can't understand.
That's
Old
pretty
English.
darn hard.
Yeah.
You ever tried to read Wycliffe? A Wycliffe Bible?
I don't think so. No,
They're pretty-
they did try to make us read Beowulf, which is Old English, in one of my
Yeah.
history classes, right? Yeah, and I was like, well, yeah, this is not English.
Yeah, I don't understand what's going on here.
Yeah. Yeah. So what else is on your mind, Amos?
Kind of always wanted to talk to you about counseling
Mhm,
and
mhm.
your take on that and inner healing, because I know you do counseling.
Yeah, less now than I used to. It feels like I used to spend 20 hours a week in that world, pastoral counseling. Yeah, the semantics of all of that stuff.
What do you mean semantics?
What now is the practice that we have of licensed professional counseling, which is, I think for the most part, I would use the term therapy for that, right? Not in a negative way, but that's kind of the way that I would use that. It's a therapeutic walking through of either current situations or past situations to provide some sense of context to a person so that they don't feel as bound up by whatever it is they're trying to work through. And then some sort of tool, a lot of times, to cope with whatever dysfunction that they feel they need to work through. Right, like it's very broad, very general. So then inside the church, and typically I would argue just the little bit that I have spent kind of going down that road, not an LPC, and I think there is a high value in a licensed professional counselor.
Okay.
So, most of the counselors that you're going to go to that insurance is going to support.
Like a therapist.
Yeah, they have to be an LPC, right? You have to get so many hours, so much schooling, work under somebody who's licensed. There's a large set of governing principles inside of there, ethical principles and all that, that makes sense why they're there. So then you have, I guess, what I would call pastoral counseling. So then you've got pastoral counseling that's occupied this very interesting place because there is, in one vein of the church, and I would say in one vein of the church that's more your mainline denominations, let's say non-charismatic world, to just put terms to it. We've taken that model and we've just kind of shifted it over and said, no, we're going to do licensed biblical counseling, right? So we're going to use the Bible as a platform for doing that essential thing. And that's a thing that I think is, again, it has its benefits. So you've got biblical counseling as a category.
What do you mean licensed biblical counseling?
So you have LPCs that are functioning as biblical counselors. So a lot of the seminaries are pushing that right now, right? So you're going to go get a biblical counseling degree, but then you're going to go through the state to get licensed. So you're still licensed as an LPC, but you're a biblical counselor. So that is its own kind of world. And then, of course, there are charismatic churches that are doing that same thing. But then there's a side of pastoral counseling that really affected me quite meaningfully over 10 years ago. And that was, in some level, it straddles the fence between what I would call discipleship and again, proper discipleship. So when I say proper discipleship, I mean something more than relaying theological truths to another person. Discipleship in some veins of the church becomes just, I'm going to convey the core orthodox beliefs of Christianity to you, and then I'm also going to hold you accountable to the ethics of Christianity. Right? So I would call that a sin-driven approach and then an intellectual approach to discipleship. There is a way of making a disciple that actually recognizes that the problem with us is not essentially sin, that we have a flesh that's vulnerable, that there are demonic beings that are at work against us, and that we live in worlds that have damaged us. And we live in worlds that we damage, right? So then sin is the outworking of those forces. And so the first discipleship / counseling / deliverance that I received addressed all that, right? And can you call it counseling? Yes. Can you call it discipleship? Yes. Do you call it pastoral counseling? Yes. It's some vein that acknowledges that real discipleship that's transformative can't happen unless you're dealing with the bondage that a person lives in first. So it doesn't matter if you teach somebody ethical truths. If they can't walk in those ethical truths because there's demonic attachment going on, or there's a level of wounding that keeps them locked into certain cycles, that they've been affected by the worlds they lived in, whether that world was their home, or whether that world was the school they went to, or whether that world was the nation they grew up in, or whether that world was some any version of those, right? So to take into account the things that really do affect a human being from when I say biblical sense, I don't just mean using biblical language, but I mean from a biblical worldview of all the powers in play that can negatively affect a human being. So there is, to me, a very, very valuable place for the sort of counseling / discipleship / inner healing / deliverance that the church that honors all of the Bible and all of the Trinity and recognizes the powers at play can really offer a person, that I think therapy can't offer, because it's not positioned to offer those things that affect us spiritually. It just isn't. It'll value spirituality in general, but doesn't have the technical tools to unwind spiritual bondage that exists in the life of a person, even though I think therapy and LPCs have a high value in walking next to somebody for a length of time to offer the various supports that they offer. So when I say, pastoral counseling, I'm referring to that, right? Because then the reason I would say it's somewhat discipleship, because you're dealing with the major levels of bondage, but you're also teaching them the tools and the recognition of how to stay free, not just get free. And so freedom becomes kind of I would say the basic litmus test for that sort of counseling that I think a church that is alive can provide to human beings. So you said counseling, and then that just opens up all of that to me. So if there's anything in there that you're like, or if that is sufficient, I don't, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
We don't necessarily need to chop it up entirely.
So there's a lot in there.
There's a lot that's been unfolding. And
I think that starting with the difference between the world and the church, because obviously a lot of any atheist that would just say it's a bunch of mumbo jumbo, talking about the demonic and the other spiritual forces or things that are tying you down, versus just talk therapy, and working through trauma, complex trauma.
Right. Yeah. I mean, I think that's the idea, is that there are ways of working through things in a strictly physical, strictly mental, strictly material, and strictly physical capacity can't afford you. Those things, there is a benefit there.
Mm-hmm. But does it leave like a God-shaped hole, or does it lean too much on individualism? Because if you're doing counseling without any spirituality or any higher power, you're just an individual who's trying to get better, or trying to get over things you don't like about yourself.
Right. Which, again, anything that is pushing us in a positive direction, I'm so for. Do you know what I mean? Like, it's not to disparage it at all. I think there is a real benefit and a real need. There's a huge need for it. But I think there is an even greater need for that thing that I'm referring to. And the reality is anybody can learn. Anybody that's filled with the Spirit of God and who has an intimate relationship with Him can walk in that thing that I'm talking about, and bring about the kingdom of God in some really powerful ways in people's lives, with just a willingness to jump in. And there should be training and finding the right tools and exploring that with somebody who has experience. That's definitely the way to do that.
Are you talking about the person doing the counseling or the person receiving the counseling?
The person doing the counseling.
Okay.
Yeah. Now, again, I think there's all of that freedom to be experienced. And that's the thing that I think when you look at the whole picture, not the whole picture of counseling, I mean the whole picture of reality. The whole picture of reality is that we are physical, spiritual beings, and that the things that are going on in the spiritual world affect our physicality, and there are things going on in the physical world that affect our spirituality. So it's not that one is, you know, one influences the other, but the other doesn't have influence over the other. We're both like, we're both whole and completely both physical and spiritual. So just like I don't have a problem with doctors, right? I'm not like disparaging doctors because they don't like only pray for people's broken legs to be healed. Like to the degree that you can understand what's going on in the physical world, explore that mystery and jump off in it and bring whatever good you can. Like beautiful, do that, right? Like, because even the physical is the creation of God. So it's like all the exploration and the healing that you can bring there is just the grace of God being administered to the world as a whole. He made it that way. We're exploring how it works. And then, so there's nothing negative about that. There is a reality that I do think Christians who are filled with the Spirit of God, who want to be a part of bringing the kingdom of God, there is a way to do that I think is not as explored as it could be within the church as a whole in the West. And that is, you can call it so many different things, but yeah, it is, because when you use the word pastoral counseling, it doesn't just have to be pastors, right? But it's like we've called it freedom ministry, but there's a degree of freedom that you can have, that with the reality that I do believe there are things that people wrestle with today that they can walk through inner healing and deliverance and not deal with those things tomorrow. Now, is that everything? No, definitely not. Are there some things? Yes, which I've seen over and over and over. People walk out of habits that they don't want to be in, experiences emotionally, mentally that they can't shake, that I think they've tried to walk through getting healing in the LPC world, and it hasn't provided it. And all that means is, okay, explore other avenues. It doesn't mean that place is all wrong. It just means that explore other avenues. One of those to be explored, I think, is what the truly Christian church can provide to someone who is stuck at whatever place they feel stuck in their life.
There's a difference between counseling and inner healing?
Yeah, I mean, I would say we're using counseling generally.
Okay.
That's
I wasn't sure if you were using the terms interchangeably.
I mean, let's just for the sake of our conversation, let's put counseling as the big heading on top of all of this. Therapy being what we do in licensed professional counseling. And again, you could break this down, and but because inside of that you have crisis counseling, you have complex trauma you have all the things that are going on underneath that umbrella. And then underneath this other umbrella that I think is what we've called in many places freedom ministry. You're talking about the working of the present working of Jesus right now, who sits at the right hand of God the Father, and who has a sort of life that he's trying to offer to all of the people who follow him, who call on him, and he wants to offer that life. And we can access that life like immediately. Now, it doesn't mean that all of it gets accessed immediately, but there is something that Holy Spirit is working on me right now and working on you right now. So we're partnering with Holy Spirit to do that. So sometimes, sorry, to get to your point, sometimes that thing that Holy Spirit is working on is something that got hurt in the past, in the recent past or the far past. And there is a degree of healing that comes when we interact with Jesus about that thing, and he brings a degree of healing. Sometimes that healing feels like just an emotional like closure. Sometimes it feels like a set of beliefs that I picked up when I experienced a lot of pain. So it's interesting that when we experience a lot of pain, we pick up lies or non-truthful things about myself, about the world at large, or about God and who God is. Once we pick those up, we operate from them. So in that way, a pain point or a wound in the past creates a way of operating that is now causing degrees of destruction in my life. So there is inner healing. There is a recognition of that pain point, the invitation of Jesus to interact about that pain point, the releasing or the repenting of the lies that we picked up about those things, or maybe other things, and maybe it's other people. Sometimes there's a degree of forgiveness that has to be offered, or releasing of vengeance, because we hold vengeance when people have wounded us. There's an interaction with God that brings about certain effects. And that's what we're looking at when we do that, is we need to relate to God about this thing, not just receive blanket forgiveness for the general things I've done wrong and then give blanket forgiveness for the general things people have done to us. There's a sort of surgery involved. And that surgery is really just stepping intentionally into the presence of the Lord and asking him to kind of reveal things while we explore that with somebody who has experience going down that road. And so, yeah, there's a degree of giving and receiving repentance and revoking vengeance that we might have picked up, and renouncing lies that we live by, and replacing those with the accuracy, the truth that were delivered in the scriptures. So yeah, that's the underneath the umbrella of counseling, is, what we can call inner healing. And then what that does occasionally is we recognize is those actions that we've committed, or the actions committed against us, and then the things that we have begun to believe because of those actions, open the door to spiritual beings who want to harm us. So in that, there is this open door for deliverance, where you are renouncing the open doors and renouncing the ties that we have made to literal demons who are trying to take vitality from you, trying to rob you of the inheritance that God has stored up for you in the heavens, trying to rob you of the destiny that God has for you in your future. All those things that are trying to minimize the image of God in you and nullify kingdom meaning and kingdom experience in your own life.
So you believe like literal demons, as far as like...
Yeah. Now, does that mean that everything that everybody wrestles with in licensed professional counseling can be traced back to a demon? No, definitely not.
I'm not sure you can really pinpoint which is which, because I do believe in both, but I do believe in agency and like taking responsibility for your own actions and things, like, and a lot of it comes from... That
is the word, right? But this is the thing. Lies give away agency. So it is. Deliverance is actually a reclaiming of agency. That's the thing, is you believe there is agency, and I would say theoretically there is agency. But
it does seem like there's people who don't have any control to stop themselves.
Many humans have given the agency away. So we in inner healing and deliverance, you are reclaiming agency, what is rightfully yours. So just there's soul ties is a thing that gets thrown around a lot. But just imagine.
Which sounds very new agey.
It sounds so new agey, right? But really, functionally, that is just codependence that you would talk about in therapy. I have given my agency away to another person, and they've given their agency away to me. So just one classical codependent model is that the passive person marries the aggressive person, and the passive person gives away their agency to the aggressive person in the form of, when that person gets mad at me, I do what they say, and I'm always trying to find the little ways to not make them angry. So in reality, I don't have actually agency. I'm constantly reading the aggressive person to find out what do they want from me. And once I've given them what they want, they give me affection and they give me kindness, and that makes me feel valuable and important. So am I walking in God's plan for me? No, because that person has control over me, right? So then language around that can become a soul tie, right? Like, because I have now given agency to that person, and they are also doing the same thing to me, because they are only at peace and at rest when they control everybody around them. So the aggressive person wants to use aggression to get everybody around them to do what they want them to do without them having to say anything. So they use aggression to try to get that reality to happen, because that reduces their anxiety. So now my anxiety gets reduced as an aggressive person by you doing what I want. Still codependent.
It's the tool that they've learned that works.
That's right. It's the tool that they've learned. So then, but what's happened in that underneath is we've both given away agency. I'm not responsible for me. You're responsible for me. So don't, make me angry.
You made me do this.
Yeah. I'm angry because you didn't do what I wanted you to do. And you know what I want you to do because I've told you 30 times. You gave away agency. Right? Agency actually is It's the last fruit of the Spirit, self-control. That's what real agency is. And so that's why discipleship or any kind of ethical teaching inside of Christianity really should follow the recognition that many people can't walk in the ethical teachings of Jesus because they are in a degree of bondage to different powers at work in their lives. And that's what I mean by a full recognition of all the powers in play in the world. I've been wounded. I believe things that are not true. And in that, I'm opening doors to spiritual beings that want to harm me and have partnered with them at various levels. Yeah.
And I think oftentimes like the agency too, like it wasn't necessarily given away. It was taken when you were a child.
Sure. Yeah.
Like things happened like with complex trauma where like you didn't have the ability to make that decision. And then you got trained into a way of thinking.
Yeah. Here's the deal. It's dark. It's not a fair game that's being played. Do you know what I mean?
The world, no, like when people talk about like, things being fair in the world, like,
right.
I don't know what world you grew up in, but
and it's that world that motivates Jesus to enter into it, suffer for it, to redeem the world out of it. If that wasn't the case, Jesus doesn't need to die. He just needs to teach. So if bondage isn't real, and the accusatory nature and power of demonic influence isn't a real thing, then the only narrative that you have to explain what Jesus is doing is that God is mad at humans and Jesus needs to make his angry God pacified. And that's not the story of the scriptures, right? Now, there is an aspect to where God is just and is a just judge and will set all things right. And so Jesus, the one to whom judgment is given, because all of the judgment that needs to happen for humans and over humans is supposed to be happening by a human. So Jesus becomes human and becomes the judge. That's why the original creed is that Jesus comes to judge the quick and the dead, the living and the dead, right? Because he's a human being who's done it all right. So he comes to judge, but prior to coming to judge, which all the Jews wanted him to do is come and judge the Romans. We're the righteous, they're the unrighteous. We don't eat pig, you eat pig, right? So judge them and set it right. And he comes and he dies underneath them. And they're like, you're not Messiah. They're even more angry, right? So then they go, we'll take this in our own hands. We'll fight the Romans. And then, 70 AD and the Jews are completely removed from their country for the next, 1900 years, something like that. So you've got in there multiple layers of the narrative that's playing out on the earth. And one of those layers is that Jesus is dying to set humans free in the here and the now. And part of the freedom that they are experiencing does have an effect where we do not have to fall under the righteous judgment of God when he comes to set all things right. That is true. But in the here and now, activity around the crucifixion and the spilled blood of Jesus and the resurrection is to nullify the power of darkness. You've been transferred from the kingdom of darkness to the kingdom of his beloved Son.
Well, I think it's also about just living a good and happy and prosperous and beneficial life. Like, isn't that what we were put here to do?
Right. And so that people get so geeked out about prosperous, right? And it's like, we shouldn't. I mean, that's...
We have to define prosperous because it's hard not to define prosperity by the world's definition, which is just lots of money or power.
Right. I think the easiest way is because what you're saying is right. Like Psalm 1, bless, and I like the word blessedness, like it's blessing, but blessing just denotes what human beings are supposed to be experiencing from the beginning. Everything that we experience negatively is the product of the curse of the ground, the curse of woman, the pain that we experience when raising a family, the pain that we experience by not having enough money to eat, the pain and the fear that we live in by not having enough is all the product of that original separation from God. So then in restoring relationship to God, he begins to unwind the effects of the curse in our lives. And that's one thing. So like,
not to interrupt, but I'm not even sure it's the lack of those things. I think it's the anxiety around the lack of faith that those things will be provided.
Well, the thing
and obviously there's areas in the world where they're not provided. Like there are people starving to death, not many of them in America. And oftentimes in America, it is by choice.
Right. And so I think faith plays a role, but there's so many other layers in that to be played. not to diminish in all of those situations, investing faith is the first and most important thing. But this is why I think God holds accountable wicked rulers of nations.
Mm-hmm.
This is why I think politics, government actually matters. This is why I think Jesus becomes king of all the earth, and he is, over the course of history, making all the kingdoms of the earth going to be underneath his kingship, because that's really what we need. A lot of the things that we're experiencing as negativity are not just the product of the curse, it's hard to make money. It's the product of, like, let's just take the American experiment again, right? It's becoming increasingly harder to provide for ourselves. And that's because we adopted a system around our currency that robs it of its, and it's a non-biblical approach to currency. That the Old Testament says that unequal weights and measures are an abomination. So you have the government's job is try to understand what's the righteous way to rule a people. And the way that we have decided to rule our people is not righteous. It's just not righteous in several regards, right? And this is not me crying, like, it's not me saying America's the worst. No, like, there are a lot of things that America has done righteously and walked in the way of the Lord, and we've experienced the benefit of it and the blessing of it.
Yeah, I don't think you can point out a righteous government on this earth.
Right, exactly right. And so I think that's the reality, is there are various levels of darkness and this is where the world comes in. So when I say the world, that's what I mean. There is a type of life being experienced in the world of Rwanda because of the influential people in the world of Rwanda. In the world of Nacogdoches, there are types of things that we're experiencing as blessing, types of things that we're not. And some of that is from the local rulers. Some of that is, but it just concentric circles all the way down to our homes. We experience different things in our homes. Our kids experience different levels of the righteous rulership of me in my home, and the unrighteous rulership of me in my home.
Mm-hmm.
So that's what I mean. The world in all of its various levels has an enormous amount of influence over human beings, and an enormous amount of influence to either bring a blessing or a curse.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yes.
So where does one start with counseling then?
Oh gosh. Tell me
from your perspective.
It depends on
your perspective.
It depends on what the person's going through. I think it's really dependent on the human.
I think you have to identify where they're at. You have to realize what exactly is their needs and what they're seeking out counseling, right? So, have you guys ever heard of Dr. Michael Cochini?
Yeah.
Okay, so he recently published a video that I thought was pretty interesting. I've heard him talk about this.
Cochini was on the deep end, is that right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Okay, yeah. Mm-hmm.
And he essentially broke down Maslow's hierarchy of needs, but he broke it down as more of a biblical, his overarching idea, which I think I agree with, and it definitely is echoed in the scripture as you read it, is bondage in Egypt, and then being in the desert, and then eventually being in the promised land.
Mm-hmm.
And that, as that kind of echoes the Christian life, if you will, right? Leaving Egypt, leaving that bondage, but some Christians are still in the desert and can't really see paradise, whereas some people are potentially in their walk already in the promised land.
Yeah, right.
So back to your point, I think before you can really dive into what exactly, if you need counseling or versus inner healing, is you have to kind of recognize where that person's at.
Yeah. Because that's right. You have various levels of bondage based of various levels of darkness that people have experienced, and the different ways that that's affected that particular person. But yeah, I mean, I think the Israel story is not just the Christian story, which I think it is. It's also the human story. That is where humanity is going. Is in that is the picture of what Jesus is doing in humanity. And Israel becomes an archetype of humanity, an archetype of the Christian life as well.
And in the video I was watching, he was more calling out other fellow Christian YouTubers that he felt were stuck in the desert, and were calling out people that potentially they just didn't agree with, that we're in the promised land. Whereas he's saying, hey, stay in your lane. You're in the desert and you're getting people out of bondage. That's great. However, don't discourage and don't look towards. And it was more of a physical versus spiritual debate where this person he was calling out was working more in the spiritual and talking about more spiritual things, and he felt that the guy didn't have any experience with that. And he's like, hey, I don't feel like you should be calling these people out, because you're, by what I'm looking at, is you don't have experience with that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
And so I think that definitely ties into what you guys are talking about with counseling and inner healing. Is you have to identify first where this person is.
Yeah.
I mean, are they still in bondage? Are they still in Egypt? Or are they in the desert, right? Are they still wandering? Yeah, they may be free. They may be, but they don't have enough faith to see into the promised land,
right?
To go in there. And then you can really kind of dive into, okay, you're still dragging these idols from Egypt, right?
That's right.
You're still wearing these, clothes that these Egyptians gave you, and you're not trusting that there is the promised land over there.
Yeah. Yeah. There's, he's just become a friend that I get to interact with occasionally. His parents go to the church, and he's got a house church in Houston. His name's Joshua Jones. He's a really, really wonderful guy, but that's kind of his, I don't know, his kind of framework, for, I think the way that he would refer to it as his calling is that there is a calling to bring the church out of the Moses generation into the Joshua generation, where the Moses generation is categorized by fear, which leads to disobedience. And the Joshua generation is categorized by courage and faith. And that's the calling, right? Because I think the church as a whole, you know what I mean, in various places can still live in that sort of Moses generation, where we only walk in obedience as we're externally conformed, and we're constantly in a position of fear. And I don't know, that's just like, as we talked about, I was like, man, it's just such a right way of talking about it. You know what I mean? It's just a right way of understanding the place that we go through in our own journey, but then the church itself is going through that journey. And yeah, this is good.
I have a lot of hope for the future.
Yeah.
Of the Christian body as a whole.
Yeah.
Because I feel like our generation is definitely looking towards the promised land and not being afraid, and to step forward and to,
I think our generation was told a lot of lies too about how the world works. Go get a college degree, go do all these things, everything will work out, you'll get a job, you'll be able to get a house, and that's become progressively not true.
Yeah.
Also, back to like the currency system that we have, like that's part of it is.
Well, you're exactly right. But even go back to the individual's conversation. That's falling in on itself, because it is getting more and more impossible, as I think it ought to, but it's hard for an individual to survive. It's much harder for an individual to survive. And I don't know that it makes sense that we should program our children that success looks like you starting at the ground floor of generation one every single generation. That we should have kids and then tell them, hey, success for you looks like making enough money that you can move away from me, come see me when you want. But I don't really care. That success means you disconnect from family in a fairly meaningful way. That success looks like you're not in my house at 18. It's like, no, the thing that we're building right now is such a beautiful expression of, me and my wife live on the blessing of my parents and her parents, who, right, like they are both, they're whole family units, not divorced. They both love each other, and they both, like my in-laws and my parents actually have a relationship. So we get to, and so then my in-laws and my parents want to take the wealth that they've stored up for their lives and push that into our lives in a strategic way so that we can stand on their shoulders. Like the reality that like I don't have to worry about a lot of babysitting because my parents and my in-laws are eager to take the kids all the time because they want to be a meaningful presence in their life. Like historically, that's what you would have done. Historically, it wouldn't you it doesn't make sense historically that the time that is consumed and the attention that is necessary to raise kids up in the way that you want them to go would be able to fall squarely on the two people who also have to give all of their time to bring in the resources to make the whole thing to work anyway. Like,
and are doing it for the first time.
And we're all figuring it out for the first time. So it's like, why would we not all want to live right next to each other, sharing the load of all that thing? I learned more from my grandfather in many ways when it came to like doing hands-on things than I did from my dad. I learned a way of life from my dad, a culture from my dad, but my dad was gathering resources, doing what he needed to do to keep us alive. And what did I get to do? I get to hang out with my grandpa, who's teaching me how to like shoot an air rifle, but he's teaching me something more than that. Like the repetition and the use of your hands and like how to take old things and fix them and make them new, like from his giant barn filled with all the stuff that he'd kept for 50 years because he was raised in the Depression, never threw anything away. And so it's like, but I learned an enormous amount hands-on from him. And so when he died, I grieved him and still grieve him, and I'm 15 years away from that at such a deep level. And I want my kids to grieve the death of my parents. That, and as much as not being morbid at all, but my parents and my in-laws should shape my grandkids an enormous amount, if that's possible. And I know that families are broken and families are all torn up. And but I also know that is one of the active roles of the demonic in the world is to tear up the family because of how meaningful that is. Like that is a meaningful thing that we shouldn't minimize. And so,
and a lot of that falls on the shoulders of entertainment too, because which generation X, my generation, basically when the TV came in the home, you started learning your values from the shows you were watching, not from your parents. Prior to that, you always gained your values from your parents.
Right.
And now we live in a world with like greatly divided values generationally.
That's exactly right. Yeah. There's a great book we're into right now, Hold On to Your Kids. About peer orientation, that exact thing. How from a young and it's all, but it goes back to that, right? Like, because we've built a culture where you don't rely on parents for anything, and that's just an absurd thing to do. What do? You bring your kids and you put them in a room where there are 2 adults and 17 kids
that are all the same age.
And so those kids are wanting innately to follow the leadership of a loving, caring adult. But when there is not the ability for the loving, caring adult to give love and care to 17 kids, they all turn to each other for affirmation. So we program peer orientation by creating the society that we live in. And then we're looking at our kids when they turn like 13 and 14, they don't want to have anything to do with us. And it's because, when they were 5 and 4, we started telling them, hey, look to them. They'll socialize you. They're your values. We created a vacuum and the other kids filled the vacuum.
Yeah.
Super great, very practical.
But we're basically creating age segregation.
Yeah. And that's why you see massive generational overturn, that you don't see that in other cultures. You just don't see that. But every generation is massively different because they're all like trying to, flip the bird to the generation that came before them instead of, relying on the generation that came before them, which is the path to blessing. It's the path to walking in a lot of ease when there shouldn't be hardship around particular things. Not that there won't be hardship, but there are some hardships we bring on ourselves.
Yeah. That's also why honor your mother and father, I believe, is one of the crucial commandments. And the reason it's in between, it's in between God and man, because the commandments before deal with God, the commandments afterwards deal with man. And then it's a national promise. honor your mother and father that your days may be long in the land that I give you.
Yep.
It's not an
Exactly.
individual promise.
Right.
It's not saying that if you honor your mother and father, you won't die in a car crash tomorrow.
Right.
You'll
Right.
live to 80.
Right.
It's like, no, you as a nation will survive long in the land if you honor the
right.
generation that came before that
And-
you're built on.
And look at all the bullet points underneath it, because when you honor the culture that came before you, you don't just get disconnected from the practices that they figured out that are generations and generations old. When it comes to like farming and agriculture
But that's also why it's important that the mother and father can, provide those beliefs and those values and those traditions to their kids with knowledge why the tradition exists.
That's right.
Like,
That's right.
Throughout, like Passover and Tabernacles are both based around doing this with your children, so they will remember what I did for you.
They will remember what I did. Yeah, all of those commands. And then I think what's interesting is about that command is I think that is a command as much to adults as it is to children, maybe even more so to adults.
I think it's oriented because it's little children obey. Is the other it's a verse? I don't know where. That
Right.
is.
You have commands for children, for little kids to obey their parents, but to honor mother and father has a lot more to do of holding. I should hold my parents in such esteem in the presence of my kids that they will look to them as something to be honored and valued. And I should hold them in such high esteem that when they get old and need my care in the way that I needed their care whenever I was 5 years old, that I'm present enough and I'm not shipping them off to find some place to be cared for. Now, I know there are situations and there's things that parents can't do. Like, I'm not disparaging that. What I am saying is we are holding it a value that we're organizing our lives right now while my parents are still healthy and my in-laws are still healthy, that they can be nearby us and we can caretake them until the very last day. You know what I mean? As much as we possibly can. So that's not a surprise when that hits us. It's not a surprise that 10 years from now that my mom and dad won't be able to do the things that they can currently do. And that we're like, oh, well, they're so far away. What do we do? What do we do with that house? Who's going to, you know what I mean? It's like, no, that we knew that was coming. You know what I mean? We knew that was coming. So,
and it's just a matter of like learning to get along in a community and valuing what the community provides more than what you as an individual need with your own idiosyncrasies and pet peeves, essentially. Like, that's what drives us apart. It's like, that person annoys me, so I don't want to be around them.
Right. Exactly.
And it's like, it's because you don't need that person to survive anymore.
Right.
Like, one thing about living up in Minnesota, it's like, I think Minnesota created like more reliable people because the weather can kill you.
No kidding.
Whereas in the South, like, you can live without your neighbor.
Yeah,
You'll get by.
Right.
And that's less true. It's less true in cities. Like, cities, everyone becomes atomistic no matter where you go.
Right.
But it does seem to be a trend where like people were maybe a little more rude in the North.
Yeah.
But they were very reliable. Like, no one would say, like, if you're selling something online and this, I'll be there on Thursday. They show up on Thursday.
Yeah. Yeah.
Whereas in the South, they may not show up.
Well, that's interesting that you say that. My in-laws, my wife's family is all in Rhode Island, except for except for her parents. But all of aunts and uncles and grandparents are in Rhode Island, and we went to her grandfather's this must have been his 90th birthday, and dude, his cul-de-sac was full of cars. Like, I'm talking like 35, 40 cars in the cul-de-sac, and all of the neighbors in that neighborhood walked down for like the biggest block party that I've ever been a part of for a 90-year-old man. You know what I mean? I'm like, we don't do parties like that. And it's like everybody was there. Do you know what I mean? Because he's so connected to his neighbors and he's so connected to extended family. And there was a tight knit, like, I had more fun at his birthday party than I had in a long time.
Yeah.
Like, it was just because there's so many people, all generations, and all interacting with each other, and all had shared, 40, 50 years of life together. It's just really, really beautiful. Like, it was like, man, that's when I'm 90, can I throw a party and, 75 people are going to show up to that? Like that's the life I'm trying to live.
Like, I mean, going back to prosperity and wealth and value, it's like, I mean, that is like social wealth. He was very socially wealthy.
Yeah, exactly right. Yeah. Yeah. Cause that's the thing is we can talk about prosperity as like, I got financial wealth. Yeah,
a lot of unhappy rich people.
Yeah. And you do that at the cost of meaningful relationships. You're doing that at a cost of other things. So it's not biblical prosperity.
Yeah.
Biblical prosperity has its health across the board in various fields.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But being poor is still stressful. It still brings unhappiness because
it doesn't just
you're
bring
worried
unhappiness.
about.
It is a source of destruction, right?
Mhm.
Like money splits apart families. It's the cause of enormous anxiety. That anxiety manifests as anger and lashing out and rejection and running away.
If you lived in a community where you knew, like, hey, I fell on hard times, I can go to that guy and get a job.
Right.
There's 20 people you can go get a job
Right,
from, or
right.
will bring you meals or whatever. If something happened, you get injured. Like, we don't live in that world. You have
Right.
insurance, and the insurance company takes care of you, or the government takes care of you.
Right.
You know?
And we even saw that in, I think in Industrial Revolution, not that Karl Marx is somebody to be revered in any respect. He's a terrible human being. But he did account for some realities that we do experience in the post-industrial world. And that's that we are disconnected from the value that we bring to a community because we're disconnected from the value of that job within that community. So when we took, when you I think the classic example is that when a cobbler made a shoe, he knew he had value in the community because he could provide the shoes to that community. When you are part of the assembly line that places the shoelaces in the shoe, you become disconnected from the product of value. And then therefore you become disconnected to the value that you materially bring to a particular community. And that is something that I think we have really seen societally is people have a disconnection of material value that they bring to the community. And you're supposed to feel that material value that you bring to a community. It's not just that you're supposed to say, oh, I'm valuable in Jesus because Jesus died for me. That's a true statement. And Jesus died for you to be his image bearer on the earth, and as his image bearer to bring a sense of meaning and productivity and value to the world in which you live.
Yeah.
That is, command one prior to don't eat from the tree of the knowledge of good and evil is to cultivate the garden.
Be fruitful and multiply.
Yeah, fruitful and multiply. And then work and keep the garden.
Yeah.
And that's an expression of productive value being brought to a system. And 100%. We're supposed to be connected to the value that we bring.
Mm-hmm. That's like what I said earlier about like a lack of faith is a source of anxiety, but that doesn't mean you just have faith and sit in the corner and do nothing.
That's right.
And bury your talent.
Yeah.
It's like you go out and you invest your talent and you bring prosperity to yourself and others to the best of your ability.
Right. You bring a useful thing to the people around you. Yeah. And then they express that value monetarily.
And in a way, like we're in a community that's all of America because like everything is based around social media and we see what's happening in every single community, can see it. And we're looking at everyone. So the people we see who bring value are Elon Musk and Donald Trump or whatever politician you want to pick, blue, left or blue or left or right, or anyone in Hollywood or all the entertainers. Like those are the people who are providing value because we all see them.
Right.
So we all want to be them.
Right.
But then you get up there and realize it's sad and lonely up there too.
Yeah, right. Because that's what
I think I haven't.
Yeah, well, it can be if you trade meaningful things for money. Yeah, you find that your life doesn't have meaning, even though you might have money. So,
yeah, but everyone might also be watching what you're doing, and you're just alone up there too, and you don't have a community. Like really, you think about it. When you're Elon Musk, who's in your community with you? Like you're the one. Richest guy in the world up there. Right. I guess you could go hang out with some other billionaires, but like none of you need each other. Right.
Yeah, and I think that's the biblical concept of the body is that there is a mutual need, and that mutual need is creating a mutual partnership. But it's based on the fact that we all need each other.
That's the thing with the modern church too, is we don't need each other in the church. We go there for our own experience to experience worship, experience God. And like for me, I always get more from church, no offense, more from church before and after than I generally do during the actual service
I got to
itself.
work on the sermons, Ben. I need to put another 10 hours in.
I mean,
I need Amos just walking away.
I get meaningful things. Like there's a reason we keep going, but like it's one of those things where it's the community connection before and after service.
Of course it should be. It's the body of Christ, right? Like that is a good thing. It is a wonderfully good thing. Yeah.
Well, it's a good church. There's a chart that shows it shows how much time you spend with your children after they move out of your house in modern society. Can you find that? Which is like, it's kind of a sobering, depressing thing when you see it. How little time you actually spend as a family after your kids leave for college. Where is it? Maybe it's that time spent with family one. I think the one I saw was even like less so than that. Where it's just like, it's a cliff that happens at 18.
Well, that would definitely.
It seemed
show
more
this
drastic than
drop-off.
that. But yeah. What is that? What are those ratios?
Less than an hour a day.
Less than an hour a day?
Or right at an hour a day.
I think what it came down to is like 2 weeks a year.
2 weeks a year?
Yeah, that you actually spend with like your parents after you leave the house, after you move out.
Oh, Lord, no.
Like averages. Like you go to college, you live in another city.
I'm chilling with
You go
Padre
back
on
for-
a weekly basis.
I know.
Me and Pops.
But that's a good thing. And I think about with my family too, because we moved here from Minnesota and then we never went back to Minnesota. So like we weren't around my grandparents. The only time we ever saw them was when my mom's mom would come to visit us, or yeah, it was non-existent.
Yeah. And yeah, I think the reality is from an individual place, it's not saying that's bad if that's the case. I'm saying as society as a whole has marginalized and devalued extended family. And I think we hurt for that. That hurts us.
And reliance on the community.
Right. And it makes surviving harder.
Yeah.
And then as the value of the dollar declines, as currency is manipulated in the way that it is, then that gets increasingly harder. So it's more and more time spent trying to gather resources, which means more and more time spent away from family. So it's like when you bring that together, you exponentially fix the problem.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But I think there's a certain portion of the world that doesn't want that. They want the factory workers. They want the peons who go and do all the labor and keep the world running. Not to sound too communistic, but you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Like
yeah.
They want to break the family apart. They don't want you, even like, I mean, to go on the public school system. Like there's a lot of that in different states where like they want, like, these are our children to raise. The parents don't get to give them the values. We give them the values.
Yeah.
There was that court case that was the Supreme Court case that just happened. I think it was California, where California was not allowing the children to opt out of LGBT
right.
books and stuff like that, classes. And the Supreme Court said, no, parents do get to opt out of that stuff.
Yeah.
Because the parents determine what
just within the last year that happened, right? Yeah.
So it's that destruction of that connection. Because that's the other thing with entertainment is it doesn't change the way you act. It changes the way you think, which changes how you raise your children.
Right.
Which changes how they act.
Right.
And that's how you change a culture.
Yeah. And I think that's exactly why it's hard to say that America even has a culture, because our culture is constantly shifting, and our culture constantly shifts under the weight.
Yeah, it's not a stable culture.
Yeah.
No.
Yeah. So it's hard to find your bearings in that.
But communities still have cultures. Like Nacogdoches has a culture.
Right.
The areas we lived up in Minnesota, they had a culture.
And I think that's why I for some reason, I couldn't quite put my finger on it, but when we moved here from Houston, it took me about 1.5 years to recognize that there was something I loved here. And as I started to go back to Houston to visit people, I would always just long to be back in the small town. And that's what was the beautiful thing, because there was a thing that I got to experience here that I don't think I got to experience in any sort of meaningful way, which was the broad connection to community. I had a group of close friends in the Houston area, but that was different than a broad level connection to an entire community.
Yeah.
Which was just incredibly important.
I think so. No, cities definitely break that up.
Well, and I think when you have the off chance of seeing somebody at the store or whatever the case may be, I think it shines a light on who you are as a person as well. and it holds you to a higher standard.
What does it mean when you avoid seeing people you know at the store?
What are you hiding?
I used to be bad about that. I used to be like, oh, I don't want to see that person. Yeah.
This is why you don't worship at church either.
Is it?
Yeah. Maybe
Why is it? Maybe we need to do some counseling on me and figure out what my hang-ups are.
Why are you hiding?
Yeah, why am I hiding?
You might just be introverted and you don't want to give that energy away. A lot of times it has energy for me. Like if when I've given away energy for the whole day and I can feel that I'm like depleted, I know it's going to be real tough for me to give what I need in that conversation. And so I mean, like, I'll be like, oh God, I can't do this right now. Like I feel completely emotionally.
Yeah.
And just need to, and I need to be.
Well, alone. And if I do it, it's someone I generally know to be more of an emotional taker than, like if I wouldn't avoid Ben, I wouldn't avoid you. Because, and if we were both drained, it'd be like, hey, how's it going?
Yeah.
And we just kind of like,
bro, I'm so dead.
Exactly.
Yeah. So no, I don't know that there's anything we need to dive deep in there, but I'm going to let you know if I see something.
Okay.
Yeah. I sure will.
It's definitely like a need to fit in type thing that I feel like that's one reason why like being useful is valuable to me. Yeah. Because it I guess proves in my mind that I'm providing something of value, and then you'll still want me to hang around. I think
that was the interesting thing is that we became friends during, like, you were just a person who was around until you showed up and like boss hogged really the lead spot on trying to build that playground. And I was so grateful that you did. Yeah. And when I don't mean that in a negative way, you knew that you had.
I mean, you guys were doing it the hard way.
Yeah. And you knew that you had knowledge and skill that we did not have. And I didn't yield to you immediately, but the minute that you began to like prove like this way is going to work, and you did it like respectfully, you weren't like, but then we spent a week we spent a long time. It was an incredibly hard and difficult playground build.
I tore a hamstring.
Yeah. I mean, I was
in bed for 2.5 weeks after that.
It was crazy, man. But we became friends because of that little process. It was like trust built. You know what I mean? Like I can listen to what Amos says about other things because he knows how to make sure, 25-foot poles are cemented into the ground and also plumb according to each other. Like that's a difficult thing to figure out how to do, and will line up perfectly to engineered platforms, and the bolt holes line up perfectly. And I'm like,
I mean, I did cheat. You lay out the platforms and then you determine.
I think that wasn't cheating. I think that was the right way to do it.
I don't know. The chart was telling you to like, anyway, it was, some of the instructions were good. Some of them weren't good.
But either way.
Going back to like, for me, like why I tore my hamstring, why I came in when like I kind of should have just stayed home because you had it at that point, is that like need to please or that need to fit in or feel useful to the group.
Yeah. Well, I mean, we definitely needed you. We might have had it, but it would have been an extra like 5 days for people that were,
I don't know,
already.
I think y'all would have figured it out at some point.
That was a crazy thing that we did. Did save us like $30,000 though.
Yeah. Well, it's nice that you have a community that can, a church community that can come together and do that. And a lot of people showed up. I mean,
a lot of people, day in and day out.
Yeah.
It was good. It was a good time. Good time, Amos.
Did you do it again? Got another playground? I don't think
we're going to do that again.
Something we can build. What do we need to build, Ben?
I was thinking about doing proposing some sort of like food pantry type thing. I think that would be really
like for the community.
Yeah.
I'm down with that. I'm big into food pantries.
For some reason, you know what it was? It was a Monday night several months ago that we were having a men's meeting, and me, Amos, and Kyle had stayed behind and we're talking, and I noticed that there were several presumably homeless people that were walking to the store to and from on that road. And for whatever reason, I came into my mind, it might be just, I've seen it in other communities where it doesn't take a lot of upkeep. It's just literally a box.
The Church of Christ, is it on North Street? They have one. They have a food pantry.
Yeah, a lot of times it's access. A lot of times the people that need food also don't have a vehicle to go get it. So having places they can walk to.
What about regulatory, like setting something? Is that difficult to set
I
up?
don't think so. Not in Nacogdoches. It's not. I don't think so. Yeah. One thing now that I've got y'all, we might actually do this.
Spitball.
They're the guys that work at Eaton right next to us. And when they get break, they typically come and hang out in their trucks over in the parking lot. But there's that like big grassy patch like between the church and Eaton that's ours. And if we built put 6 posts in the ground like we did on the back playground and put up 2 of those like shades and some Adirondack chairs and some picnic tables.
Do you mean the grassy plot between
Eaton?
The one with the trees on it?
Yeah, the one with the trees.
Okay.
Yeah.
Against the road.
Against the road, against University. But, I mean, do you think those guys would like take a break and not eat in their truck and eat around a picnic table and eat in some Adirondack chairs?
Could it be sponsored by Christians Talking About Shit podcast?
It could be. Yeah.
How are we gonna sponsor that? And like
they can
like have a speaker in the corner there that's constantly playing it, so they have to listen to it.
Take a break and listen.
Well, no. If y'all jump in and help with the labor, maybe we could put a little.
Would that encourage loitering?
That was my next thought. Would it encourage riffraff?
Yeah.
I don't know. I get the intention that you're going for. I just don't know, because you think it is a lot of space. Monday, Tuesday, Thursday, Friday.
Because I think they're a 24-hour shop. You know what I mean? They're all through the day and night. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I don't know.
Talk about it.
Saw picnic tables at Harry's. They had built treated picnic tables for $129 a piece.
Were they?
Harry's.
That's not bad.
It's not bad.
You know, they'd have to.
I mean, it's probably $40. It's probably $40
to be comfortable. You know what I mean? Like a picnic table might be good, a couple of them, but then some like
shade,
laid back chairs in the shade, so you could be like, come on break.
They might fall asleep and lose their job.
I will say that the most influential part of being a part of Mosaic's community is not only serving, right? Where you get to,
because Ben's out there serving in the trenches.
He is. He's serving his butt off.
In the trenches, bro.
Shoulder to shoulder, right? But also when we have like food, I don't know, food just brings people together.
Humans eat, man.
Yeah.
The one thing I miss is like potluck after Sunday.
Well, just come on Wednesday night.
It's not quite the same.
It's the same. It's actually better, actually.
That room is noisy though.
Yeah, we need to.
That one room is.
We're gonna try to fix that room so it's a little more homey.
How would you fix?
Maybe some mobile furniture, some stuff on the walls, just deaden the sound a little bit.
But no, like again, the community aspect of like everyone getting together and we never quite connected with a community group.
Yeah, it's time to try that Wednesday night again, Amos. And we don't worship in there.
Problem is, I know. For me, like, there's so much other time taken in the week that, like, Wednesdays are a night I can get some stuff done.
Terrell, I got a question. Probably no, just for both of y'all, really. About just kind of circling back to, I agree with community being important as well as honoring your parents, your mother and father. I would like to hear you guys chime in with regards to, and I want to develop that with my kids, and I see that really flourishing with them, to kind of train them up as young adults that one day actually want to hang out with their parents one day, right? And give them more responsibility as they get older. But what does that look like on the reverse side when potentially you have fractured relationships with your parents, or one or two, and right? I mean, at that point, how do you follow through? You had kind of mentioned a little bit, Amos, about, the distinction of obey your parents being more towards the children versus the commandment of honoring.
I don't think a
And
10-year-old can honor their parents. I don't think they understand the concept.
I would agree with that. And I mean, what I would say is the sad reality is that some generations are just generation one, and that that some parents have chosen fracture and control and different things that push kids away, and kids they don't want or can't in a healthy way have the relationship that I think they probably deep down want, because of whatever fractured relationship is there.
Well, and also
So
like the refusal for the parent to continue to change. Like they continue down that path.
right.
It's a toxic relationship. Like, cause it like, and that's where like, I mean, honoring, like you can, sometimes the best way to honor a parent is not be around them.
Right. I think that the reality is the things that I'm talking about as values don't always get to be realized. In many cases, since our culture is so different, you're going against the grain of cultural realities, not just cultural values, cultural realities. And if you decide to do that, the sad reality is you bump up against many people who they have to start that, and they are generation one in doing that. They're not, that it's not what I'm saying is not like, hey, at all costs, you've got to go figure out how to restore this with your parents. It's like, no, you're starting from the beginning, and you're creating the foundation for that sort of life to be lived, where you are the grandparent one day, and your kids are honoring you because you raised them in a way that valued them as people and didn't try to overly control them, but you tried to train them in what it looks like to be a part of a contributing member of the family, and to know what the family's mission is and what is the family trying to accomplish, and that they're a part of that. And so, yeah, I mean, I think that's
Essentially breaking the generational curse.
Yeah.
Because generational curses are like a legit thing. Even if you don't believe they're spiritually attached, like there's a flow happening through the family where one parent raises a kid this way, so they raise their kid that way.
It all
so
has
they raise their
momentum.
kid that way. Yeah. And it snowballs.
And I think it's important to make that distinction, because so many times people take verses out of context and use them as weapons towards other people to, obey your parents.
Man, it's so hard to. It's so easy to weaponize the Bible.
Honor and obey are two different things. Like if your parent is telling you to commit a sin, you can't obey them.
Yeah. I mean, I think that everything in the Bible is said very specifically, and always meant to liberate and bring life, and we can weaponize them. You know what I mean? It's so easy to weaponize the Bible. And it's hurtful because it's such a powerful book. It's such a powerful text. No, that's a good question, Ben. I'm glad you said that, because I think even when I talk that way about an ideal, it's just very easy for people that have not gotten to experience any part of that, or only a piece of that, and it's no fault of their own, to feel as if I'm saying like you're doing something wrong. And it's really not. It's a value that me and Lauren are really trying to
well, and then
live
it's
by.
Fortunate that both of you had good parents who invested in their kids and now invest in their grandkids.
Yeah. That's a blessing that we couldn't have paid for. You know what I mean? And we've also said we want you in our lives. You know what I mean? And none of us are perfect. And it would be easy for the imperfections in me or parents or in-laws to drive a wedge. But we've all always come back to the table when little conflicts occur. And that's it takes that. You know what I mean?
But you value the relationships and the hierarchy and like what God has put in place more than your own personal desires and foibles.
Yeah. There is a real something to honoring, I honor my father-in-law in front of my kids all the time, like as a thing that like, as a intentional like lesson to them, that he has a valuable thing that he brings to our family that I cannot bring to this family. Like, and I think people like dads especially get like, you know what I mean? Like my kids will call my father-in-law he can fix it. Like he's Mr. Fix It. You know what I mean? And like, I can fix a decent amount of stuff. You know what I mean? And so when they used to say that, I'd be like, but you know what I mean? Like, But there is a reality like, no. You need to recognize him as being able to bring things into this family that I cannot bring. And that I recognize that, I see that, and I honor that. And that's a good thing. And you should pick up this stuff from him. Like that, it's just so easy to get combative or whatever out of some weird ego place, you know?
It comes down to, like I said, ego, and like you feel less value because that person is being more valued.
Right.
In their own way.
And it's easy for you know, the parents of one, like in-laws and my parents early on to be like, well, they do this more, they do this more, they do this more, and to create like a insecurity. And it's easy to go there. And then my parents and my in-laws chose not to do that. Like, I think they could see the temptation, they could feel it, but they chose to engage each other, and they have their own friendship now. Like and that's like a crazy thing, you know?
Yeah. I mean, that is kind of crazy.
Yeah, it's great. And it's like,
but the idea that it would be foreign is, in today's society, is kind of preposterous. Like, why is it a foreign idea that the in-laws get along?
Right. That's what I'm going to like. I've seen it, and I've seen the beauty of it. My parents come to my in-laws house on Christmas morning. Like, you know what I mean? So it's like Thanksgiving is at my parents' house and my in-laws go to that. Christmas is at my in-laws' house and my parents go to that. And it's like, most people that I talk to, when they start having kids, they're getting ripped apart at holidays by their parents, by the fight over the kids between the in-laws. And it's like, no, what are you doing? Like, what on earth are you doing? Why would you rip your kids apart because they don't give you the hours that you want? Like, you demand that they come to you. Do you know what I mean? Like,
yeah.
That is the time when you are now at the stage of your life where you have to yield to like maintain relationship. I don't know. Like, I saw my parents and my in-laws do things that I had never seen before, and it really is super effective, super powerful. Like,
but like in any like community-based society, that would be the norm.
It'd just be natural
because
you just go over
the
there.
parents, like the parents would have known each other when the kids were born.
Right,
who got married.
right. And they like arranged that because they were friends
That's
anyway.
why, like, I'm not totally opposed to arranged marriages as long as it's above board and like all parties are on board.
They last longer.
Yeah. Because again, and that's the other thing about, like, I mean, we were my wife and I we were talking about someone was talking about a prenup. We were watching White Lotus, and then the one character asked the other one if you got a prenup. He's like, yeah, but it's complicated, blah, 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 blah. And I'm like, that is part of like the destruction of the society, though, is that, you know, a woman can marry a man and leave him 6 months later with half his stuff. But then a man can get a prenup and then be married for 20 years, have her, you know, her have all the children, and then him just dump her and take off because he had the prenup. Right. And it's like, no, like, you made a lifelong commitment to one another to stay together for yourselves, for God, for the children, for the grandchildren. Right. Like, that's the purpose behind this. Otherwise, you're just doing it for yourself.
You're just doing it for yourself, right? Yeah. You establish this to create a legacy of stability and a refuge in difficult times, and a platform for success. Like, but success in the sense of like a system that works as a whole, not just you got a good job making a good amount of money. That's not what I mean by success. I mean an organized whole that is accomplishing meaningful things inside of a community. That is like, it's beautiful.
But the core purpose behind that is like the children, because you have no further community or society without them.
Right.
It's like, I mean, I know there's plenty of marriages out there where they can't have children. I don't fault them at all. But like, if you're getting together and you can have children, and you just choose not to for career or for your own pleasures or whatever, I just think you're doing it wrong. Like, I have a moral problem with that. Like, I think that if you're just choosing not to have children.
Ooh, tune in a couple weeks.
I love Amos's problems because he does have flags in the ground.
We're going to have a whole 360 on this topic.
I mean, that's kind of a hard one, though. Like, that was the first command from God. Be fruitful and multiply.
Right.
Oh, I don't disagree with you.
I know, but like, I don't know why people have a problem with that. And the only reason you have a problem with that is because you care more about yourself than you do about society or the next generation.
We are going to have to explore this. Yeah, I'm down for what Amos has got to say on this topic.
I don't know. I think I said it all.
That's it.
Like, what? I mean, that's
There's got to be somebody that can bring about some some opposing thoughts. I don't have them, but there may be
okay,
somebody.
but it comes down to fatherhood and motherhood. Like if you're like, let's take the Catholics for example. Like if you're a priest, you don't get married, therefore you don't have children. Like theoretically, you're not supposed to be doing any of those things. I disagree with, I think pastors and teachers and preachers and priests should all be able to get married, but you're still in the role of a father. If you're a priest, you're taking a father role. Like every man ultimately is commanded to be a father, and every woman is ultimately commanded to be a mother, even if you didn't physically sire or birth those children.
Right.
Do we know how many children the apostles fathered?
I don't think we know.
Paul never got married.
Paul didn't get married.
Timothy.
We don't. I mean, there may be some records that I'm aware of. We know Peter.
Mary had 5 kids, right? Mary married the mother of Jesus.
Oh,
she had 4 brothers, right?
Is that right? 4 brothers? That may be right.
No, I think the Catholics believe that she never had intercourse.
Yeah, that they were all immaculate.
All of them?
Or
they just weren't. Like maybe they were Joseph's kids. I don't know.
I don't know what they. I do agree with you that I think they believe that she remained celibate.
Yeah, because sex is a sin. Even though a good Catholic has lots of kids.
It's an odd place to stand. I know.
I've got a good referral for you later on, Terrell, for Catholics and Mary, the Mariology of it all.
Oh, really? All right.
Yeah, it's
I like to explore the Catholics.
They
got some interesting stuff.
But they do have a good community, though.
Oh yeah,
it's like Mormons too. Mormons have an excellent community,
dude. One of the other really fun parties I went to recently was at the Catholic church down the street from the house that we just moved from. It's a Mexican, community, Mexican Catholic church.
Yeah.
And it was the wildest raging party that I've been to on a Sunday afternoon in a long time. But a ton of fun. So much fun.
Maybe Mosaic should throw one of those.
It just wouldn't be that fun. White people party. When they have a party, what that means is we're going to bring and let our kids play while we have like a committed 2-hour window. That's it. Like that's what.
So I like it when it's just a kind of a free for all.
It should be a free for all day
thing where the kids come and play.
Should be a free for all day. Yeah, you should be there all day.
You go when you need to. There should be like a room with beds so you can go take a nap.
I don't know that we go that far, but but yeah, to me that's an all day thing. The kids are having fun, everybody's hanging out. You just be there.
Yeah. All right. Well, now we know what we're doing next. We're gonna make this a monthly thing.
Are we?
Yeah. We used to have the every 5th Sunday.
Did we?
Meals.
Oh, we did used to have 5th Sunday. They just slowly start having less and less and less people. It's, people get busy.
People get busy.
Yeah. And so, but that's what I realized is we can do things as long as we change it, short runs, but switch it up. And people are like, oh, try that out.
But some of us like getting like the routine and like the normal, predictable,
but less and less people like that. That's what I realized. Yeah. I mean, that last one, everybody was doing something else. And we were like, maybe
it was a one-off.
It wasn't. We saw the decline. I could chart it on a bar graph.
See, you ruined there.
Yeah.
Graphing everyone who shows up.
Gosh, I was going to say something.
Oh
yeah, the skate party. Make sure you're there. You know what I'm saying? Because skating as a church family, in rollerblades, is an epic time.
Yeah, I made the mistake last time of not bringing my socks. I'm gonna have to. Come prepared.
It's just such a classic thing to do.
Crocs and socks.
A skating rink.
No, they're fun. It's nice that we actually still have one.
I know.
But like those things are going away too.
That's a dying vestige of the
Minnesota,
90s.
there was a bowling alley. So it was like a town of 1,500 people and there was a bowling alley and the bowling alley burnt down and nobody rebuilt it.
Yeah.
But it was the hub where everyone went and hung out.
I'm telling you, bowling alleys, they need to be revived. Bowling alleys and skating rinks.
All right. Well, we know our agenda now.
All
right. Well, thank you, Terrell.
Hey. Yeah. Thank you, Amos.
Good conversation.
It's a nice little afternoon. Yeah. Spending time with you guys. Ben, thank you.
Yes, sir.
Yeah.
Did we answer your question?
Yeah.
Because we kind of also interrupted you partway through the question.
Did we?
I kind of did.
You did?
I think I did.
No,
Amos.
that's the direction I wanted to cap it with.
Okay. All right. Well, cool. It does. All right. Is that what you want?
You live over there?
That is like gonna be awful dark.
That's pretty dark.
You might need to take your hat off.
That's pretty dark.
Pretty dark in here.
That's pretty dark.
This podcast is taking a dark turn.
If the podcast takes a dark turn, somebody save us. We will definitely need our community at that point. All 266 of you guys.
I think some people would say this podcast started on a dark turn.
Yeah.
With the name alone.
Well, what do we say to those people?
I don't know.
I don't know.
God forgives.
Yeah. No, I think while we were talking with Terrell about bringing value to a community and being detached from that, what resonated with me was thinking about this podcast and like, what does that mean for us to do this, and are we bringing value?
I hope so.
Yeah, I thought it was very insightful. It's always nice having Terrell.
Mm-hmm. I enjoy having Terrell on.
Yeah, he's got a whole smorgasbord of good ideas.
Mm-hmm.
Not even just good ideas, but practical.
Yeah, well, he's been around.
Practical sense too. Yeah, man, it was good. Good pod, good hang.
You got to do it on an evening sometime now. We need to get an evening hang.
I'm telling you.
Yeah.
Little sea toss after dark.
Nothing
wrong with that.
Live stream?
Yeah, live stream would be sweet.
Might get rowdy.
Hey guys, what do you guys think about a live stream? Is that something that you would want us to do? And if so, what? What are we doing if we're live streaming? Something that we're thinking about. You know.
Yeah, no, I think we escalate this thing.
Yeah, take it to the next level.
Yeah.
Ready Player 2.
Yeah. Where can we be found?
Hey, everybody. We're found anywhere that you can find a podcast, on YouTube, Spotify. Definitely check us out. Give us a like. Give us a comment. We sure do appreciate it. Subscribe to the channel and support what we're doing over here, because we do feel like we're bringing some sort of value to the internet in a net positive way. But yeah,